I've migrated back to the homeland too. I'm in upstate New York, where I'm from originally, and where my family is now.
I thought were you Tennessee at one point, or did you move? Or
Texas. I was in Texas. I've been a bit of everywhere, man. I was in LA, and then I moved to Texas kind of when COVID hit. And then I came out here.
How you finding how long you been home?
About a week and a half, not too long. I love it, man. I like it out here. Yeah, it's I don't know. Upstate New York is interesting. It's kind of off the grid a little bit, and it's calmer, and it's just beautiful out here. It's just a lot of nature.
Cold winters or not too bad?
It gets cold out here, but recently it's been doable. I was out, enough to enjoy it outside. Now it's been nice, man. It's warming up super quick, and once the summer hits here, it's like summer in any other place that's warm. So,
is it quite remote, or are you in a city?
Very remote. Yeah, about 2.5 hours outside of New York City. It's cool because you can get to wherever you want to go. You know, you can take a train to the city pretty easily. But yeah, you're definitely out here on your own, which I enjoy.
Did you grow up that way? You grew up on a farm, right?
Yeah. Yep. I grew up about 10 minutes from where my parents live now, and then lived there till I was about 8 years old. And then that's when we moved to Louisville, Kentucky. And I kind of spent like my middle school and my high school in the South. I guess it's like the Southern Midwest. But yeah, so yeah, my parents ended up moving back up here because they just like it.
How did you find moving in the city when you first went there then, if you kind of grew up in the countryside all your life?
When I moved to Louisville isn't a massive city, but it was a change for sure. I mean, every time I come back out here, I realize how much I grew up in a space very different than most of America. So it's definitely played into, who I am and I guess how I think about things. But honestly, man, I don't know why it's going to sound like an ignorant statement, but whenever I'm in upstate New York, I'm like, I kind of always think I'm kind of like somewhere in Europe. I never really feel like I'm in the United States, and that makes me happy.
Get escape for a little while.
Yeah. As you can tell, I'm not like the most prideful American, so maybe that's my issue.
Maybe that's a sign of the times. 10 years ago, it probably wasn't quite as bad.
Yeah, I don't know if I could say that 10 years ago. What? You're from the U.S. and you're not a proud American? Get out of here, man. Now it's like, well, maybe I'm not the only one. But no, it's nice out here, man. I'm enjoying it, and yeah, just kind of getting ready to put out this whole album this summer. So I stay busy.
What did you? So you were saying you grew up. You feel like you didn't grow up like a typical American. You had a slightly different life. What did you sort of mean by that?
A little bit. I grew up in a small town, like a town so small they don't even have like a sign for it. It's called Harlanville. Harlanville is like I call it a farming community. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but we did grow up. People live very much so sustaining themselves off of a small community that has farm store, school. A lot of people in the community go to that school, live right around the area, and just very like self-contained and sustainable. There's a lot of little towns nearby, but Harlanville was a special one, man. It just like, again, it kind of exists on its own, like kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I grew up kind of a little more alternatively than, most American kids, I guess. My parents were very much against a lot of just like materialism and consumerism. I was allowed to watch TV when I turned like 12. So like I got to watch a movie every like month until I was like 11 or 12. And then finally they like broke down when we moved to Louisville and we got to watch TV. So stuff like that, like our toy, like not like no plastic. Like we played with like wooden toys because they didn't believe in just like buying plastic. Then my mom broke down and got me Legos, and I got really into Legos. So just stuff like that, man, like stuff that just like was a little more.
Legos good for creativity.
Super, man. I still love Legos. Still give me some Legos. But yeah, man, just different in that sense. And it's definitely, continued and stays with kind of shaping the values that I hold and who I am. And so I'm coming back here. I'm 27 now, coming back here, going back to Harlanville, being around this community and seeing these people. And, it reminds me that it was, I grew up very differently. And, you get older, you wonder, you start wondering where you want to, at some point, settle down. And sometimes I still wonder, maybe I'll come back here. I mean, it's a really, I don't know. It's a different kind of connection out here. You're more connected to the land. You're more connected to nature. You're more connected to a community, which again, like these are all things I feel like in our time that are hard to come by. So yeah, man, it's nice. It's nice. I'm happy they moved back out here, even if I just get to come and visit.
If you didn't have TV until you were 12, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
What was your kind of primary form of storytelling growing up? Because for a lot of kids, it is TV. That's how they kind of get that.
Books and audiobooks, man. Yeah. The Harry Potter audiobooks. Oh, still listen to them. Have you ever heard those by Jim Dale?
Well, I think we had Stephen Fry. That was the guy who kind of read them over here.
Stephen Fry. Okay. I think Jim Dale was from the UK, but I know the Stephen Fry ones. They don't come close to the Jim Dale ones.
Nah?
No, man. I'll send you a link. I found a link online that allows you to listen to all the audiobooks, and it might be the only audiobook link online for the Harry Potter books at this point. I spent a lot of time finding it, so it's a sacred link.
Does he do different voices?
Yeah, man. I think he won. I think he's kind of won every award under the sun for them.
What sort of other stuff outside of Harry Potter?
Lord of the Rings. Any like classic, set of novels. Let's see, what else did we like? A Series of Unfortunate Events was a big one for me. And then we'd always just get like, even just like a one-off book on audio tape. Like I just remember as a kid listening to the Fantastic Mr. Fox like every day on my tape cassette. So like I always liked narrating. I always liked reading. And that's kind of how I got into music. I mean, I wasn't exactly musically talented. I was good at writing. And I was good at expressing a thought and doing it in a creative way. And I think a lot of that comes from, my upbringing, spending time being very creative and not like, sitting in front of a TV or something like that.
So you were like a storyteller before you were a songwriter? I
think so. Yeah. I entered the young authors competition in like 4th grade and won for this little book. I'm not there. Yeah. So yeah, like that kind of stuff, dude, was my kind of way. I knew I had something to say and I knew I could find a cool way to say it. So that definitely, and when I first got into music, I was just kind of like rapping and freestyling, and same thing, man. It was just like, it was always about the lyrics, and it's still always about the lyrics, like this upcoming album. And when I go in the studio these days, I mean, yeah, I've progressed a lot as a songwriter, as a melody writer, and as a musician, as a producer, but man, like the lyrics are still like number one for me. I just love the lyrics. So that's always stuck with me.
Leave My Casket Open is quite an interesting one to look at lyrically in context of your broader work, because quite often you seem to be writing at something or against something.
Mm.
Whereas with Leave My Casket Open, it feels more like you're writing a song for someone.
Mm. Yeah.
Would that be a fair assessment? Or
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this whole new album is very different. Like I'm interested to see, when it comes out, what the response will be, because it's not as, I'm not writing against society. I more so took the opportunity to write about myself and some of my own struggles, and still find a voice in it that's not completely me, but it's definitely more so an album of my own personal quirks as opposed to like societal quirks, like Fear was.
When you said the voice is more you, but it's not completely you, what's the rest of it made up of?
I feel like I still always try to be cognizant of, I'm not a writer who writes like, oh, is this hook and is this melody going to be huge and is it going to be a hit? I don't write like that. But how I do write is like, is what I'm choosing to share something that I feel like is relatable and helps younger people who need it, as opposed, or am I just projecting my own issues, right? Like I'm not going to go into the studio and write a whole album about all my struggles with being an artist and the music industry and all the things I don't like and all the people I don't like. Because to me, that might be fun to listen to be honest, right? Or it might be like a real way to put out the frustration. But a lot of those thoughts and stuff, I'm like, I'm not going to waste my listeners' time with it. Like it might be important to me, but is this something like a kid in, sitting at home in Idaho, like gives a shit about? And sometimes it's just not, sometimes like, God, save that for yourself, man. Like write a song that connects with you, but also connects with other people. And I think that's most songwriters, right? Like you want to connect. That's what a huge part of it is about, is expressing a thought that someone else can listen to and find some kind of solace or peace of mind or enjoyment out of. So When I say not fully my voice, I mean, I always try and keep in mind that there's a voice that I'm using that is also connecting to other people and their struggles.
Did your relationship to that voice change when you did the fan album in lockdown? When you wrote the record with the fans?
No, man, that album was just fun, man. That was just like getting people on a FaceTime, like live chat and just writing music. Like that was just fun. That was just to do something different. And I knew a lot of people who are fans of music, like music, and they probably want to write it. So I figured, why not, write it together? But that felt like its own thing.
Did you feel like more of a producer on that too? The way you're kind of gathering everyone's things and assembling them and making something cohesive out of it?
Yeah. I produced a lot of that. That most of that was like my initial production. And that was great for me because since then I've been producing a lot of my stuff. I mean, every demo I make these days, unless I'm working with another producer, I'm producing it. So production has continued to be something I love. I work with people who are much better producers than me, but I love producing on my own. And that's how I get most of my concepts. And tons of times I'll just take a song to a session with another producer or someone that I've already produced, and I won't even say anything. I'll just like mute out all the production and pretend it's a top line that I came up with somehow, because that's, sometimes my production is just to get a good song out. So yeah, man, I love the production process. I love everything about the music process. There's nothing I don't like when it comes to making music.
You're saying you still work with other producers. Were you producing before you worked with other producers, or were you working with other producers before you started producing yourself?
Good question. That's a good question. No, I'd say at the end of the day, I started producing after working with other producers. I like when Fear came out, that first album, My Friends Are Robots. You put me in front of a piece of production software. I had no idea what to do. So it wasn't until after that album that I started to get a little more involved in the industry and started doing sessions and working with other people, and a little more and more started to realize, hey, I love this, and I can start trying to do this as well.
I remember when I was reading some of the earlier interviews when you first came out, and you were talking about how when you initially started music, you had a lot of great ideas, but it took you a while to figure out a way to kind of assemble them and structure them in a way that felt efficient and felt cohesive and felt effective. Mm-hmm. Was that something you kind of learned when you started working with producers?
Yeah, for sure. And just working on my own, a combination of working with a producer one day, seeing how they do it, coming back and trying that out in my studio, work with another person, right? Like that was a huge part of becoming more efficient. And I did this whole last album with John Feldman, who's a great producer in the rock space. And I learned a ton from him. Like he taught me a ton. I don't even know if he realizes how much he taught me, but I just being around the process, I saw a lot of cohesivity in how he thought about writing a song. I felt pretty similar about a lot of the aspects. So a lot of the stuff that I saw him and his team doing, I just kind of, it helped me take it and become more efficient and run with it myself. So yeah, man, other people for sure. Like being around other people is just so good. There are people who get so good by just doing it alone in their like apartment or their studio or whatever. But I'm playing catch up. I've only been doing it for like 2 years. So for me, seeing other people is definitely super helpful.
What was the last thing you learned from John? You were saying that you've learned a lot from him.
The last thing I learned from John, I think the thing I've learned most about John is just how to intuitively, find melodies and express emotion through songs. I think what I learned with John mostly was very intuitive. Like he just helped install a new energy in me of how I approach melody and singing, and that helped a lot. I think before that I would shy away from some of these bigger melodies. My brain didn't really think of them, and now it seems like they just kind of come. So I think a lot of what I picked up with John was just grabbing the energy and the mindset he has, and then just kind of like doing my own thing with it.
Does that impact the writing process in any way also?
For sure. Yeah. And there's more singing on this album than Fear, for sure. And I've been working on hundreds of demos since this album. This album was actually finished like almost a year ago. So I just continue to sing more and more and take more chances with with my vocal, which is really exciting to me because I was never thought of myself as a singer. I was always very aware that I wasn't a singer. And so that's been like one of the most exciting things for me in music these days, is really starting to feel a bit more like a singer, because again, I was far from it when I started. So
when did you notice that transition? Was there a particular moment that kind of prompted that revelation that you felt a bit more?
There's still moments, man. Like there's still moments where I'll make a demo. Like even recently I made one, and I'll know because I'll share with people, and people also will be like, you're singing even more on this. Like your vocal is coming along. Like you're taking some chances, you're doing some runs, you're doing some things that I've just never heard you do. And I sit back and I'm like, you're right. I am like, so I think it's it's just little moments I see more and more where I'm like, I'm coming into just a better technique with how I sing. And it's allowing me to have a little more confidence and a little more subconscious confidence to try some things that I just wouldn't try. I was just working on a song, and I'm very gridded with my work, where it's like I don't overlap vocals too much. I write pretty pop forward, and I was doing this really interesting run ad lib over the last chorus, and it just was sounding so cool and so different. And as I was listening back to the song, I was like, man, that song is really good. Like it sounds more developed than almost anything I made. And I was thinking about, well, that's because I'm adding all these parts that I just wouldn't add before. And so it's stuff like that, it's stuff that you get to step back, and it could be something just as simple as a demo, but you go back and you listen to it and you're like, wow, I've progressed. Like this is the proof is in the pudding right here, that I'm doing stuff now that I wasn't doing before, and it's sounding good. So yeah, I think that's how I've learned. It's step by step. There's always these little moments. And I think that's what keeps a lot of songwriters going. That's what keeps me going as a musician. It's you always get these, it's the best wins aren't if the song does well, or if someone says, hey, your music's so good. It's the wins that you take that demo you made, and I go on a walk and I play it 100 times because I know it's one of my better songs I've written. You know what I mean? That's the win. And that will sustain me for a couple months, Then I got to find another song that I think is good enough to feel that way again. So,
well, it's almost about the process and the progression, isn't it? And just
absolutely.
as that's starting to wear off, you break through the next door.
Yep.
And you're into the next thing.
Yeah. 100%.
Keeps you going, keeps the momentum flowing.
Momentum in, yeah.
What's the rhythm of your workflow like? How often are you producing a demo? You're saying you've done hundreds since this record was
done. I have probably about 110, 115 songs or parts of songs I've done since finishing this record, Nonfiction. I get in grooves and I go and I might do a song a day for a week, and I might in a month. Yeah. I work quick.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's my biggest strength, man, is my songwriting. I've come to that conclusion, whether I can sell myself, that's another question. I'm a pretty heady dude, but I can write a song. That's what I can do well. So I try and focus on what I can do really well right now, but I think I also focus on it because I just love it. It's just I love writing songs. So yeah, man, I write a lot, but I do it too because it just helps me. Writing music for me is very, and again, I'm not saying this I'm special, because I know this is how it is for a lot of artists, but it's very therapeutic, and it feels like just the right thing to do. That's what I do. I'm an artist. So it just feels when I have time in my day, it just feels like what I should be doing is writing a song. And I guess the nice thing is I never force it. I like it so much that it's a treat for me. It's not oh God, I gotta go write a song now, and I don't have the energy. If I don't have the energy to write a song, I'm just not going to go write the song. So that's a big thing for me too. Is I never go in just to go through the motions, and that's something I'm trying to do more and more, is be really clear with that. If I'm going in, I'm stepping foot in here, and I'm picking up a pen, or I'm putting my voice to the microphone. I better be fully engaged and trying to get something real out of it, or else it's going to be a half-assed piece of work and I'm not going to use it. And at that point, I'm just doing an exercise. That was a rant, but there you go.
I mean, you're saying there that if you're not feeling up for it, you won't go in. that's kind of a forced break. How often will you take a break that isn't forced by that and it's just a conscious, I feel like I should stop to try and catch my breath?
I'll do that when I'll always feel it. I have like a good meter for that, where I'll just be like, because then like this week, like I'm working on, actually I'm lying. I lied. I did a song last night, but that was because I had a session on the books. But like, I don't know, when I have like other work, to be honest, as an artist who like has the other duties to fulfill at this point, like music videos and working on stuff for the album, when I'm like overwhelmed with that stuff, I just go write a song. So to avoid doing the work, that's what's bad, is to avoid trying to figure that stuff out. Like I'm lost and I don't know what to do, or I don't know what I want to sell or whatever. And I'm like, and I can't. And instead of sitting down and figuring it out, I'm just like, I'll just go write a song. So, and then in the way I think in my head, is like, well, I'm investing in my future. Like, there's always got to be good music. Like the music comes first. It always will. So like, it's a fuck doing that shit. I'm just gonna write a song. And then I'm like still on the same boat the next day. Like, well, you still got to do that. Like you wrote a song, but still gonna do the other stuff. So
it's probably better than just watching Netflix, though.
That is true. It's way better than blowing it off and doing nothing. But it's still not doing what I need to do. So yeah, dude. It's how it goes. But yeah, man. I love the writing. I can do it every day because I love it. But when the break comes, I feel it. I step back. Usually when I'm traveling and going somewhere and reconfiguring and resettling, that's when I usually will take like a nice couple like a week or two away from music. And it's super important too. Like I think every time I work on music for like say 3 months straight, I'm like kind of always in studio mode. And I'm sure other people will attest to this too. And then I step back and just do other things and stay away from music for 2 weeks and come back. It's like working out. Like you work out and build your strength and your endurance and your muscles for like 4 months straight. And if you take like a good week break and come back, you're going to actually realize a lot more gain because your body has time to recover. And I think the creative mind is very similar to a muscle because the brain is muscle, and giving that time to expand and chill, coming back, it's like it has a new strength. It has a little more wisdom than it did when you were in the thick of it.
Are those lessons that you get when you come back, are they directly in reference to a particular song, or are they just broader lessons about your creativity and your workflow?
Broad. It's like broad. It's like super broad. Like I have a better ear. Wow. Like I know quicker. I know more quickly when that's not a good melody, or like when that's not a good part, or like when it's out of rhythm, or like when something's too slow. Like these really broad things that I used to not realize. The more and more I take these steps back and get, more fluent with my craft, you have these bigger picture abilities to see some things that you just don't see when you're like in the weeds. Like I used to have this issue all the time where I'd always make things too slow. And I'll play it for someone and they're like, oh, it's good. It's pretty slow though. So but like over time now, because I knew that was something that I did, and I still love slow stuff. That's kind of my thing. But like, I'll also know now that's in my psychic. I'll also know when someone else is working a song with a producer or whatever, and like they're making, I'm like, that's too slow. We need to bump that up. Right. So like I would like just these little things that like, you just get better at over time, and they're not like these super nitpicky things. They're like pretty big picture stuff. The big picture is huge, man. Like sometimes these days too, I'll like just finish a demo and I'll like take it and I'll go take a break from a day. And the first time I listen to it, I'll put it on like half volume on my iPhone, just on the table. And I'm just like, if I knew nothing about this, cared nothing at all, was just like passing by, like, and it's on like half volume on iPhone speaker, like, what do I hear? Because then you realize like, oh, all the things that I hear when you're in the thick of it, like you don't hear all that stuff. Like, just finding ways to simplify the way I listen to music has been super important to me, because you have all these details that you think are cool, but then like you step back and like maybe it's not that cool. So,
well, it's interesting what you were saying there about, when you started off, often you would make songs too slow. Because I seem to speak to a lot of musicians who have the same thing. I've spoken to a few musicians that when they go back, they're working on their debut record and they go back to find some older tracks to bring in, they're always shocked by how slow the tempo is, and they've sped it up live in the interim. Why is that? Why is it when musicians start off, they often make things a little too slow?
I think that's a good question. I think it's because like making music's a personal thing, and I think it slows you down and it makes you contemplative. And I think that with a lot of musicians, if you're not making some super fast paced hip hop or rock music, you're probably making something pretty contemplative. And I think when it's contemplative, I think it slows the body down. It slows the mind down. Your heart rate rests. And I think making music brings people a lot of peace, right? And so I think when you're at peace as a human, especially, I think you're just moving at a bit of a slower pace. That's how I see it. Like my stuff, it tends to be slower because I'm sitting down and I'm reflecting and I'm like taking a breath and I'm like making something. I'm trying to be thoughtful. And it's like that energy probably isn't going to be like super fast and like moving, unless like that's your intention. At least like if your intention is coming like, I got to make this thing, like, let's go, then maybe it is that. But if you're making something that's a little more reflective and artful, I think you're probably going to go to a bit of a slower place. At least I do.
That's a funny juxtaposition when your work ethic's so quick as well. Like you're writing the song so quickly and yet it's a slow contemplative place for you.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm trying to be a little slower actually with my, not with my work ethic, but my style, because I do like to I like to get things done when it comes to songs. I can't say that about everything in my career, but with songs, like I don't like to leave things. Like so many artists. I have friends and I know people who can like start an idea and they're like, okay, it's a cool, like there's something cool here. I'm gonna come visit this tomorrow or the next day. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like we gotta finish the song. We got a piece of a song here. We gotta flesh it out. So that's just like my psyche is like it's got to get done, and I'm trying to change that a little bit and be a little more like reflective and not have to finish. So yeah, man, I'm definitely trying to get a little better with that for sure. Cause I think it can help.
That work ethic, is that something you kind of choose to learn or is it something you just have?
I've always had the work ethic when it comes, but here's the thing. I have to like it. If I can find something that I like, I'll work. I'm obsessive. I wouldn't even say I have a good work ethic. I'm just an obsessive guy. If you give me something I like, I'm going to do it a lot. I'm like, I have OCD, man. And I talk about it on this album a bit. The song 98 Degrees that's coming out this week is actually the first lyric is I'm looking for an antibiotic for compulsive behavior. And it's true, man. I'm just compulsive. Like I'm also a simple guy. I have like a few things I like to do and I just do them all the time. So luckily, there's some healthy things in there. I love to run. I love to work out. I love to read and I love to make music. So the good thing I think at least that gives me some peace of mind is I've found things that I compulsively do that are actually not the worst things to be doing. Like if I was into drugs or if I was into alcohol or like, I'm not into that stuff. So I feel lucky because again, with my behavior and my brain, I find things and I just do them all the time.
How did you kind of cope with and channel that obsessive behavior before you had music?
Yeah, school, and it ran me into the ground. Actually, I got really sick, and I struggled a lot in college. I gave up music, and I was focusing on business, and I was focusing on school, and I became super obsessive with school and my grades, and it really messed me up. And that's actually what brought me back to music was I was so stressed out and disconnected that I thought music would be a good way to reconnect with myself. And that's actually how like Arrested Youth and my career kind of came back around was music was there to kind of help me connect. So always been that way, man. Always. I wasn't as bad in like middle school, high school, but once I hit like my early 20s, it started to show a little more.
It's a maturing thing, isn't it? As you become more like your real self.
Yeah.
And those barriers start to come down.
Yeah.
Both the good and the bad sides come out.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure. And so again, I think I cut myself some slack, like in the sense that I think I found some good things to be obsessive about again. Like I haven't got into bad things to be obsessive with, so, but then again, man, like you can take a good thing and turn it bad through obsession, right? So you see that with everything. So I try and be mindful of it. And yeah, I talk about it some on this album. And yeah, I try and find things in my life that can help me balance it, to the best of my ability. And running is a huge thing for me. I run a lot, and it helps me so much. Like, it helps me just as much as the music. When I'm out running, I kind of find my peace. So yeah, we all got to find the things that help us through, especially, these days with, we're so wired, right, with technology and the pace of life. We're just so wired, man. And it's tough. That's tough. I that's probably my biggest struggle still with being an artist, is what it requires. Your success as an artist depends so much on people being plugged into technology at all points of the day. And it's just been a really tough, like, altruistic battle for me, because I want a career and I want to do well. But I gotta I will always be honest about it. I do not think, our route, our path in technology is leading us toward something incredibly healthy. So, that's just my own.
You spoke about
opinion.
this on Instagram this week, I think, didn't you? You put up
Yeah,
a post kind of talking about this issue directly.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't know, man. The tough things, I don't know how people want to hear it. Like, we're on it. Do you really want to hear it while you're on it? We all know how addicting it is. No one wants to change their behavior. And there's that big Netflix documentary that touched on it. I think technology is just so incredibly addicting. And now it's not only addicting, but it's connecting us in every way, every industry. And I get it. But again, from where I'm from how I grew up, from the values I was raised with, I'm not even want to tell people what's right or wrong, but I at least think the thought should be out there of, like, this wasn't exactly how the human biome was set up to exist, with all this disconnection from your hands and yourself and your body, like sitting on a screen. Like, that's not how we were meant to live. So somewhere along the line, like, we have to, like, everyone has to accept that, like, we're living in a way that I don't know if that's how we were meant to exist as humans. So I know it sounds like heady, but
the human brain is only supposed to ever see 150 to 200 other human beings in its lifetime, and you can see that in 10 minutes if you scroll through Instagram.
Oh god, I didn't even know that.
Individual unique faces.
Wow.
Okay, it's to do with the way that we were raised in terms of, like, evolution and, like, tribe sizes.
Really?
Like, you're talking, like, tribes of 15, you'd maybe only come upon, like, another 2 or 3 tribes in your lifetime.
Wow. See, I
There's
didn't
only,
even
like,
know that.
150 unique faces. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, man. And that's the thing. And I don't say this, too often, because I know it just sounds like preaching. But we have all these issues that we talk about all day over the internet, right? Social issues, political issues, health issues, like all these things. And we use the platform of technology to talk about it. It's very clear people are struggling. Like, we're all struggling as human race. And I know we've always been struggling, but I think it's pretty clear that struggling maybe to a higher degree of tension. I just find it interesting that, like, one of the global conversations isn't the use of technology and how to limit it, because we're having all these talks about all these things, but it's like all these issues, but the biggest issue is the technology itself. Like, can we all get on that same page? And is there a way to be mindful of that and moderate it? And I don't know. I think everything in the world reaches a boiling point. You watch it, everything finds its boiling point. And I don't want to sound like a pessimist or like a fatalist, but, like, I do think technology and its effect on humans is going to reach a boiling point at some point. At some point, I think it's going to reach a point where we all are like, people are like, we can't keep living like this. We don't know how, like, what health consequences it's going to have for kids who've been on it since 5 years old, and where they're going to be at age 35. We don't know. Like, so again, I know that sounds so, like, kind of conspiracy theory, or like, oh, this guy is just, like, expecting the worst and he's cynical and doesn't like technology. Like, yeah, no, I kind of am, but, like, at the same time, I think that it is a valid point to bring up, purely for the fact that it's on a popular level. It's not brought up too often.
Yeah. I mean, I've said before, tax it. Like, stick something, because the problem is that people can go on as much as they want and there's no repercussions.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And there's no repercussion. There's no clear repercussion. Like, you eat food all day, you're going to get fat and you're going to see it. And there's going to be a repercussion, right? And the thing with the technology is it's all affecting here. There's no, like, baseline to say, like, oh, I'm 15% less happy this week because of technology. Like we don't have any guidelines or true tangible effects to say, hey, this is why it needs to be limited. That's the issue. It's so ambiguous. It's fleeting. Whereas all these other things, you say, oh, well, if you eat this much sugar, this is what it's going to do to your body, right? You eat this much fat, this is what's going to do to how your organs and your digestive system works, right? Like we have these clear landmarks for like what these, if we engage in things that aren't fully healthy, how they're going to affect us. And the issue with the technology, from what I've been able to at least observe, and I don't sound like I observe everything, but this is how I think of it. We have no type of way to tangibly assess the negative impacts that it's having on us. And I think if we did, people might take it more seriously because they might realize that it's having real tangible effects on their life. But we're so in it and we have so little guidance, and it's so relatively new when you think about it. It's so new, this life we're living. Like we're living a different life and it's new. All of it's so new that it's like we don't have a bird's eye view of it. But I think about this stuff a lot because maybe I'm just a little more sensitive. I feel it. Like I feel being around my phone. I feel its effect on my brain, on my energy, on my physical. And it's not good, you know? So I don't know. I think more and more people will get to a point like that where and maybe a lot of people secretly are. But the one other part, and I know I'm ranting, but the one other part I will say is the tough part is it's a catch-22, mainly because we've all built our lives, our careers, and our longevity on it. And I think a lot of people feel exactly how I'm talking right now. But why bite the hand that feeds you, right? Like, obviously I have my shtick with technology, yet I'm still getting on it right now to promote my new song and connect with my fans. Because what am I going to do? Go live in the woods and not be an artist? So the other thing too is we've put our whole world and our careers and our livelihoods on it. So it's people are careful with what they say about it because, again, unless you're a woodsmith or a barista, you're probably relying on it in some essence to help make a living. And so that's what's tough is we built everything on it. So there's a fear there of if you were to completely turn away from it or completely cut it out, you might not get to live the life that you want to live.
Are there any structures that you do put in place to try and change your relationship with it and push it in a more healthier direction?
I just try and limit it, these days. This is like my big thing is just trying to be mindful. I try and remove as much of the mind. I think number one for me is removing the mindfulness away. Like I assess the action I take on it is there an intent here or is it just mindlessness? And if it's mindlessness, then I should cut that behavior. Because for myself. Now, if it's an intent, if I need to reach out to someone and I want to connect with people who I care about, or I need to put out a piece of information so people have it, or I need to just show a little face because I built a following of people who are invested in what I do and I should be grateful for that. Those things I try and say, okay, we can do this. Don't be a douchebag. But if it's just the mindless stuff or the comparing yourself to others or what's this guy doing, those things, I try and cut that out as much as I can because it's on some level, it's just a cycle of devastation,
I like that phrase.
Cycle of devastation.
Oh,
it's sad, yeah, it's like, oh, man, why am I I'm a piece of shit. On the next day, I'm not doing that. Okay, well, what am I? It's just also, it's like if we were only meant to see that many people in a day, think of how much we just compare ourselves these days. I think it's just, how can that not impact the psyche? How can that not wear at your morale and your livelihood? I think that's the thing too. The more time I'm on if I'm spending too much time on technology today, I wake up feeling tired. It takes a lot from you. The devices and the technology steals your energy, man. It steals your livelihood. That's how I feel, honestly. I know I sound very intense, but that is how I feel a lot of the time. And I'll know, if I spend a day on it a lot, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll feel on the edge and I'll feel tense.
Hungover.
Yeah, hungover, dude. hungover, like my neck will hurt, and I'll probably wake up with like kind of a negative thought on something. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff where you realize like this stuff is powerful. And how you regulate it, I don't know, but I do believe that at some point there's going to have to be a global discussion on technology, and it should be there for the youth. It should be there for kids. I mean, there should be a global discussion going on. You don't give your 10-year-old a cigarette. You probably shouldn't let your 10-year-old sit on their phone all day, because you're kind of raw. If you let them do that, you're disconnecting them from like this whole life. I was thinking about the other day of like, I think of technology in my use these days, and it takes discipline to connect to the real world at this point. It takes discipline to go out and really connect with nature and be away from your phone and experience what it feels like to be alive. And I push myself to do it more and more and more and more, because the way I sell it to myself is like, there are chances that you get hit by a car sometimes weak and die. There is a chance. Something, God forbid, happens and you pass away. Like, I want to pass away connected to like the real world, not this screen, because it would be so sad if I like passed away and that week I had like been living in not even a real world on a cell phone screen. Like, that'd be a sad way to go out. That's kind of how I sell it to myself these days.
That's a very creative way to look at it. Like, in terms of, a lot of the time when we think of a creative as someone who's working, like you're saying, your work ethic, you're making a song every day, it's almost tied into a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you died tomorrow, you would want to spend the day before doing the thing you love and making a song, and that's maybe partially why you work all the time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, or because I don't know what else to do with myself. No, yeah, for sure, man, for sure. And so, like, yeah, man, these are all thoughts, and I know I have my thoughts. I'm pretty stubborn. I have my opinions, but I also know that there's another side to it, and I know that it does good things, and I know it's giving people chances to have lives and careers that they might not have been able to have otherwise. And it's helped. I've heard a lot of kids talk about, they come from toxic families and they have bad relationships and they don't have support at home, and they find support online that helps them feel like they're a part of the community and helps them realize there's more out there than, maybe the misconceptions placed on them by their parents and the ones at their house. So I know there's great things going on too, right? And I think that's just with everything in the world is there's the good and there's the bad, and that's how everything works. So I'm not here, like, on my thing, I've continued to like make peace with, like, I'm not completely anti-technology, but I do think there needs to be continued conversation on moderation. I think moderation is like the key to it. And I don't think we're living in a world of moderation with technology. And I don't know. I'd welcome anyone to disagree that on a mass level right now, we're in moderation with our use of technology.
When was the last day you didn't look at your phone?
It's been a while. I haven't just put my phone away for a whole day. So, I mean, yeah, I'm not, and that's the thing too. I by no means take away in this interview want to be like, this guy is never uses his phone. Is like completely above everyone else with technology. It's not true. I struggle with it all the time, but I am at least just trying to voice it, because it seems to be a pretty silent topic on a mass level.
Trying to start a conversation.
Yeah, just conversations. Like, I think everyone feels a little guilty with technology, man. I think everyone's like, yeah, do this. But like, no one wants to really talk about it. No one wants to talk about the use of technology because everyone feels guilty, and it's so addicting that they know they're not going to change it. So everyone just kind of is like, oh yeah, we get it. Technology is bad. Like, yeah, I know it's terrible. It's disconnecting us from the world and nature and people. And yeah, but like, it's like, it's a thought that passes with the people I talk to, and we just keep on living with it because it's such a huge part of life. So yeah, I think having conversations about it in a more logical way. I mean, I know I just talked about it pretty cynically, but if you could get a guy who's less cynical than me and less stubborn to talk about it, maybe he would have some more to offer, like more people. But I do think it needs to be talked about. I do think it needs to be addressed. And I do think, I think things need to be out there to help make changes. And with my album coming out, and we just finished filming a piece today. It wasn't a music video. It was actually a side piece of filming. I don't know what it is exactly yet, but we have filmed me and my day and just going running, and we made a piece out of it. That's pretty cool. I don't know what it is. It looks like we're selling a commercial to go out and be active, but it's cool because it's like suggesting that via the screen as an artist, you just see artists kind of always doing something creative to keep you glued to the screen. It's kind of suggesting maybe inspiring you to get off the screen and go do something outside in your life. And so I don't know what it is exactly yet, but I like what we did with it. And I'm going to try and do my best on this album to be engaged with people over online, yet at the same time have a big part of my message to connect more deeply with yourself and get off this stuff as much as you can. So we'll see where that leads. I don't want to preach. I don't want it to be something that turns people away, but I would like to, help kind of put out what I stand for with this album a bit more. So we'll see what happens.
It feels like you're very openly, coming at this issue and this topic from a place of trying to assess the positives and the negatives of it and unpack it and understand it.
Yeah.
When you're approaching topics in your music, do you feel like you more often write from a place of understanding or a place of confusion?
I think I try and write from a place of questioning and a place of, opening up conversation, I think is how I like to say it. And I do it through stating some of my struggle, but I always have a little bit of hope in there. I always have a bit of a hopeful undertone. I like juxtaposition in everything. Like I really do. I like to say one thing and leave the other part up for interpretation. And I like, as a lot of artists do, I like to be in the grays. I don't like it to be one thing. So I try and do that with my music and my songwriting. And I think I did a pretty good job on this album of leaving room for the listener to go do what they want with the lyrics and connect in ways they want to. Like, so it's not so much me that it's like I try to keep my opinion out of a lot of the music and make it more about my struggle and my journey toward being a person I want to be and aspire to be. And I try and make sure that there's room in the songs and the songwriting for someone else to connect with and say, hey, me too. I think if I put too much of myself in there and get too cynical with it, I kind of take away the room for someone else to make their own meaning with it. Cause all they take away from it is like, well, that guy thinks that. It's like, okay. Right. So really interesting, man. I'll do another interview sometime where we can walk through my thought. I always thought that'd be a cool interview, was to walk through like the thought process we're all writing a song. Like why I'll start off a sentence and then I'll cut it back and I'll take out those two words because those two words feel like it's crossing the border of saying something. Like it's such an art to it, and
fine line to walk.
Yeah, fine line to walk, and there's such an art to it, and there's such an English narration aspect to it for me. That's just like about the word and about it's so fun, man. And it's so cool. It'd be so cool to walk through that thought process in time of writing a song. I think people like music nerds would enjoy that shit. So maybe someday we'll do that.
Just to touch on it slightly, you said that you'll write from a place of questioning.
Yeah.
Is that what often starts a song? A question?
Yeah.
Is that what you often begin the journey?
A question, a struggle, a setback. Usually questioning. I would say this album a lot more it's been expressing, as it is for most artists. I think this album's a little more traditional in the sense where I choose to express myself and my struggles. I just felt like that was what I wanted to do with this album. And I think I still did it in a way that wasn't too, like I said, wasn't too me, wasn't too on the nose. I think the writing is still really cool, but it is more personal and it is more direct. It's not as ambiguous. It's not as symbolic. It's not as like artfully done as Fear. It's a lot more like what you see is what you get. That's what I wanted. That's what was on my psyche to make. So it's not as much questioning society on this album. I think it's more so questioning myself.